We're good. Hey, everybody. This is week 3, Coffee with Coaches. We've got Stephanie, our head nutrition, head kids coach, and our adult coaches here with us. I'm Patrick, head coach here at Sakers CrossFit, as well as owner. We're going live this week just so we can blast it out there, man. We've had a busy week. We just got done with a really fun workout that was open for everybody to come in. We had a nice number of folks in here, and then Stephanie gave a really fantastic nutrition seminar afterward. It went really well. You want to do a brief recap?
Okay, sure. So Monday, January 6th, we have our first 28-day nutrition reset to kind of kickstart the year on a healthy start. And so what that looks like is it's 28 days. You're going to get accountability. You're going to get before and after in-body scans. You're going to get a private Facebook group where we can bounce ideas and frustrations and wins off of each other. You're going to get customized macros and meal prep ideas. Lots and lots and lots of information.
Awesome
We're really excited about it. So if you haven't signed up yet or you have questions, please feel to reach out to any of us. Again, that starts Monday, and we're super pumped about it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys have any questions, be sure to post them in the comments, and we'll answer them as we're going through this. But we do have a couple questions carrying over from last week. The first one is from Carolyn Hall, and she was asking about equipment. What kind of personal equipment do we as athletes, what do we want to use? And you can see we've got an abundance of stuff. Today we're going to talk about two things, weightlifting shoes and weightlifting belts. So when it comes to CrossFit, weightlifting belts are very, very, very beneficial. And when it comes to Olympic weightlifting, weightlifting belts are very, very beneficial. Now there's two different types. There's a leather belt that has the buckle and you cinch it real tight and you bring it over. And then of course there's this more of like a fabric belt that has Velcro coming in like this. These fabric and Velcro belts are fantastic because you can get them on and off very quickly. Don't mind.
It's only a mirage.
I'm making
it's
sure
it's our tech gremlin right here.
If people pose questions, I want to see if they come up. Sorry.
Okay, so this belt you can get on and off very easily, and in the middle of a workout, this is going to be very beneficial. If you've got like heavy front squats and then you got to go do double unders, you don't want that belt, cutting off your air supply when you're trying to do a high cardio movement. So you can get this on and off fairly quickly. I recommend this if you're going to be in the Olympic weightlifting and more of in that arena and only in that arena. Leather belt is great. It just takes a little bit of time to break in the new belts, but these work just as well, and you can get these on Amazon. Go to a local sporting goods store. There's not really a brand that I recommend. I've had this one for years and it works great. And then the idea behind the weightlifting belt, the premise behind it, it's going to really keep an intra-abdominal pressure. When we push this in tight and we're going into a deep squat, we're pushing out with all our might in our stomach. It's going to give us that intra-abdominal pressure, and it's going to keep a rigid core and put some good stabilization in our spine. And that helps keep that spine intact as we're going deep into a squat. And so that's why it helps our back. It gives it a little bit of more security, stabilization right there. And it'll help deliver that max power. So I definitely recommend weightlifting belt for just about anybody. For our newer athletes, it's okay. We're going to be working on form, so we always keep our weights really light and then progress up. When we start getting into really heavy movements or even light movements with high rep scheme, we're really going to want to try to get that belt on there and provide that stabilization. So yeah, that's our weightlifting belt. Recommend it for everybody. Next thing I want to talk about are our shoes, the weightlifting shoes. Now you can see we've got a whole abundance of shoes right up here in front of us. These are Olympic weightlifting shoes specific for Olympic weightlifting. And I'll get into the difference between Olympic shoes and powerlifting powerlifting shoes, and there is a difference there.
Very touchy subject.
It is a touchy
with
subject.
This one.
It is.
Because there's a huge difference.
And there's an in between as well for like a hybrid type weightlifting shoe, and so we'll talk about that. Now, the idea of the shoe is it provides a solid and elevated heel, and that's going to give you, and that's mainly for a range of motion. When you're getting into a deep squat or you're beginning that snatch, you want as much of an upright torso, well, to a degree as possible, and that's going to help us get into that range of motion with our ankles and try to get us there. It's also going to provide a really solid base platform so that when we're getting deep into a squat, that it helps us keep our weight in our heels, even though it can go all over the place. But we can see with some of these shoes, there's not much mobility back here as it is with like a running shoe, our normal Metcons that we might wear, or Nanos. Really rigid toe here. Flexible toe, rigid heel support. The increase in the height from the floor to the heel, to our heel, is usually about, I'd say, 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch, depending on where you are, and that's a general standard. Now, we've got Adidas here, which are pretty well known. We've got Reebok Legacy lifters here. We've got Nike Ramoleros, and they come in all different colors and fun stuff. We can see we got two here, two of the Ramoleros here. We have another one that's called a Velasa, which is a really neat shoe. This is a little bit heavier because it's a solid wood back, and it's pretty rigid all the way through. So you can take a look at all these different types of weightlifting shoes that are out there. The couple that I will talk about that we're going to try to stay away from as much as possible
is my shoe.
This is Stephanie's shoe. This is a powerlifting shoe. And the reason I know this is a powerlifting shoe, it's got a smaller heel. So this is about a 1/2 inch or so. And this is a hybrid shoe between CrossFit and weightlifting. This would be actually a decent shoe. This is one I imagine that they tout that you can go on, you can come in and do front squats, any kind of squatting kind of stuff, and then go out there in the field and use those, run around and do whatever. And then we've got this other one. This is a powerlifting shoe as well. So we're gonna stay away from these unless you are going into powerlifting, which is more deadlift, push, deadlift, back squat, and bench press is what it is. So yeah, that's what we're looking at there.
So you're saying bigger heel.
You want a bigger heel.
That works for me.
Bigger heels.
Bigger heel,
right?
better.
If you have stilettos, bring those out.
Bring
that
them.
would be great. So that's
That's a whole nother conversation.
That's a whole nother conversation. You don't absolutely need weightlifting shoes. If you're new to this and you have some, we're still going through the technique and stuff, just use your regular shoes. The reason we don't use regular shoes in this, or running shoes, is they don't have that stable base. You have a little bit more squishiness in those shoes, and these provide that real stable, rigid base that we can lift on. So that answers that for our equipment stuff. There's so much more we could dive into with this kind of equipment, your own equipment, and what you can bring. But that's just the tip of the iceberg there.
Yeah.
You want to talk about our next one?
Sure. Nancy, one of our amazing members, asked about what is intermittent fasting. We see intermittent fasting kind of partnered up with the whole keto fad that's going on right now. Fasting has actually been going on for many, many years as part of different rituals and religions and things like that. And it's only been over the last, 5 years that it's turned into like more of a fad type situation. It is what it is. But basically, intermittent fasting it's not a way of eating, it's not what you can eat, it's more of a tool and a timing thing. So what you see is people, like for me, for instance, I do a 16-8 type of window. So I fast for 16 hours and I have 8 hours of window to eat. What's good about it is it's a free tool, so you can do it anywhere. I would always especially if you have diabetes or high blood pressure or anything like that. Like always talk to them first. But benefits. So you're going to be able to shed unwanted fat. It regulates your blood pressure. It reduces inflammation. What else? It decreases your risk of type 2 diabetes. Type 1 is metabolic. Type 2 is lifestyle. So it's going to help decrease the risk of that. Reduce oxidative stress on your body, which is huge. It's good for your brain. And one thing I noticed for me specifically is it's cleared my skin up. This is not for everybody. So when you do start out anything new, obviously take it slow. So it could be something where you fast for 6 hours. Or when I've set up my fasting time, most of my fasting actually happens when I'm sleeping. So, and the purpose of a fast is to repair. A lot of times when we're grazing, we're eating all day long. Our body never has a moment to just rest and repair and reset. And it's really important. So I do most of mine at night. I don't eat anything after 7, and then I don't eat again until like 11, anytime after 11. Intermittent fasting is also, it triggers 2 really important hormones, human growth hormone and insulin. Insulin is like when it's super high, it's going to be kind of like that tire on our bellies or like big bellies. Like our insulin is really high. Human growth hormone is going to be known for building aiding in weight loss and building lean muscle mass. So if there's too much insulin, it cuts off your HGH. And so intermittent fasting research has been researched for regulating those 2 hormones in a way where it produces really amazing fat loss. I notice, because I do fasted workouts, I wouldn't recommend that for anybody who has like diabetes or anything like that, but I notice that I perform better, and the science behind working out fasted is that you burn more fat. And so some really positive research behind it. Obviously there are some cons to that, which is it can drop your blood sugar. Like if you're not used to fasting, your blood sugar will drop and you'll be hungry, and so then you tend to overeat when you're super hungry, and you kind of pinball multiple ways with that. But start slow if that's something you're interested in. Always talk it over with your doctor. It's not for everybody. But I think my biggest peeve with intermittent fasting is that it's paired with the whole keto fad. Keto is not, like food is not keto. Being in a state of ketosis is actually a metabolic state. And so like when we see all these labels like this food is keto, blah, 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 I hate that. Don't be fooled by that. It's a metabolic state, and that's what intermittent fasting helps with. It's not a food. It's not what you eat. It's all timing. So it can be really amazing for some and absolutely awful for others.
So I want to ask, and going back to another topic or earlier topic, and when would you recommend, if somebody's intermittent fasting and they're doing it fairly new, when would you recommend them to actually do a workout? Like, so if somebody's doing an 18-hour, 16 or 18-hour fast, you probably, for somebody who's fairly new to it, don't want to come in right at the tail end.
Yeah, no. You want to work out at the beginning phases of your fast. I do it at the tail end of mine, that way I can go home and eat. Yeah. And that works for me. We are not all the same. For someone new, I would not start out that way. Your blood sugar is going to tank, and you probably will end up on our floor, and we don't want you on our floor unless you're like, it's after the workout and it's because it's really hard. We don't want to have to, call 911 or anything like that. We don't want you passing out in here. So for someone who's new, do not come in at the tail end of your fast. I would not recommend that. And you just have to play with it. If you feel really good at the beginning of your fast working out, my only concern is that our blood sugar tends to spike after a workout and we get really hungry. So is that sustainable working out at the beginning of your fast? Probably not, because you're going to be hungry the rest of the day. So it's about making that last meal that you have before you start your fast really high in fat and protein, because fat and protein are what are going to keep you satiated, keep your hunger balanced, your blood sugar balanced. That's why my diabetics eat their last meal is going to be high in protein and high in fat, so that way when they wake up in the morning, their blood sugar is not bottomed out. Right. So you have to play around with it, but please don't come in at the end of your workout or at the end of your fast to work out if you're new to this. And if you do, make sure you tell us so we know. So we know
So you
what's
can
going on.
watch out for
So
the
we
sun.
can shove some candy in your mouth after you pass out.
So if you start eating at say 11 or 12,
Mm-hmm.
you'd be fine coming in at maybe 4:30, 5:30.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And yeah, it's great.
After you get some,
so-
get some food in your body, yes.
After we get some food in our body,
Yes.
and then definitely doing that.
Yeah.
I think that is about it as far as everything goes, unless you had anything else you wanted to add into that intermittent
I don't
fasting.
think so. If you have any more questions that we didn't hit, this is definitely just a scratching of the surface. It goes much deeper than the amount of time that we actually have. So feel free to reach out to us with any more questions. If intermittent fasting is something that you want to do as part of your lifestyle change, we can definitely work with you to find that balance. So yeah, just don't ever hesitate to ask.
Yep. And then we've got one question
Okay.
from the audience here, and it's how did you guys get to be so smart? From Jennifer, and I was just born this way, man. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just my intelligence just passes on to him. We just bounce. The intelligence just bounces off of each other, and when they collide, it's magic. It's all the knowledge.
All the knowledge.
All the knowledge.
All right, great. I think that's everything we got for today. Tune in next week. We might be live, we might not be,
Yeah.
but who knows? We'll get another coffee with coaches out here. We'll get Coach Rob in there as well.
Yeah, send us some questions, and they've been really good ones so far.
I like them.
Keep them coming. Bye.